Okay, I think we're live. So I just wanted to discuss some of my initial impressions of the Gosnell movie. I don't know how many of you have heard about it. If you're watching my channel, you probably have heard about the film, which is basically a dramatization of the subtitle pretty much says it all, America's biggest serial killer. This was a man who was responsible for, he was an abortionist, but in addition to the tens of thousands of abortions he performed, he most likely murdered alive. He most likely murdered hundreds, at least hundreds, perhaps thousands of babies that were born alive after they exited the birth canal. He snipped their necks and left them to expire dirty uh, on dirty tables, and you have to actually see the film in order to just get a sense of how warped and twisted this guy was, but even more how just amoral the system which preserved him for decades was. In fact, there's one scene where one of the people from the health department who was brought along on the initial raid of Gosnell's clinic when they were just looking for illegal drugs, because that's what tipped them off to Kermit Gosnell. The initial investigation had nothing to do with murdering newborns. It was an investigation into illegal prescriptions for OxyContin. So the health inspector was brought along in order to um, make sure the patients, quote unquote, were nothing was going to happen to them. So there's a great scene when they're convening a grand jury to indict Kermit Gosnell, where they ask her, why didn't you do anything? You had all of these reports of violations, other doctors, former workers complaining about the unsanitary conditions, and there are pictures. They show pictures during the end credits of cats roaming around. There was cat feces. There were bags of what they later discovered to be body parts, dismembered babies. There in milk cartons and in garbage bags. They were using a garbage disposal to slice up and dice discarded fetuses, and that was one of the reasons it clogged, so people couldn't use the bathroom. So they had patients urinating on the walls. It's just such a horrific situation, and it was allowed to go on for years because abortionists are given protection by our government beyond and above what a nail salon would have. In fact, that's a climatic scene, the one I was just describing, where they asked this health inspector why you didn't do anything. She said, they asked her why, if someone had died in a nail salon and a woman did die in his office, wouldn't you have closed it, or at least investigated? Nail salons are investigated once a year. This torture cell wasn't, which is what it wasn't investigated for decades. She goes, well, no, we don't do that. We got word from Tom Ridge, and Tom Ridge is the former head of the Department of Homeland Security. But before that, he was the governor, the pro-abortion governor of Pennsylvania. We got word from Tom Ridge we shouldn't do anything. So there was a political class that was devoted to protecting someone who was, to all intents and purposes, a serial killer, with the biggest serial killer. This guy made Jeffrey Dahmer and Ted Bundy look like pikers. So, I mean, this is just such a remarkable story. It points out the complicity of the media as well. They show a row of empty. There's one scene where a blogger, who's the only journalist reporting on this case, shows a scene of empty chairs at benches where reporters should be, but the reporters aren't there because they don't care. They don't want to report on someone who could undermine the public's trust in abortion. So there are a lot of great insights to be gleaned from this film. Another, which this is one the only problem I had with the film, which was marvelously made. It was a brilliant screenplay by Andrew Clavin. He deserves credit. Brilliant direction by Nick Searcy, who most of you may know as being a Twitter savage. He just destroys the left on Twitter. He was also in Justified, but he directed this film. And it's brilliant direction, superb acting. It has the feel of a made-for-TV movie, just the way it's structured, but it's a made-for-TV movie that looks like a major motion picture. The people who donated on Kickstarter to help produce this film, they deserve major kudos. But I just want to close this analysis of the film Gosnell by pointing up another major point, and this is the one area which I take issue with the film, because they try to present it as not about abortion, and in a sense, it wasn't. He did kill babies that were born alive. He wasn't prosecuted. The prosecution wasn't about him performing even late-term abortions, even though it wasn't mostly about that. There were charges, and he was convicted of many counts of performing late-term abortions. And the woman he killed, who died in his office, came there for a late-term abortion. So I mean, it's a bit inaccurate to say it's just about abortion, but in a sense, the problem I have is that they did not. It is about abortion. There's no way they can, and they can't even avoid it in the film itself. There's an amazing scene where Gosnell's defense attorney cross-examines the quote-unquote good abortion doctor, a woman in pearls and a very prim suit. She's the complete opposite of this weird, creepy guy who has illegal exotic turtles in his office and has cats defecating and urinating, and is just a weird, gross figure. I mean, she's the prim, proper. She looks like the former head of Planned Parenthood, or Abortion Barbie, the blonde woman who ran for Texas governor and got demolished by Greg Abbott. But she's on cross-examination. This is a woman who proudly said she never snipped the necks of babies, and then he goes on to describe a D&E, dilation and evacuation, where you essentially dismember the baby and pull it through the woman's birth canal with forceps. And at the end, he sums it up by saying, "Well, I think snipping a neck is a lot more humane." And there's outrage in the courtroom, but he has a point. There's no pretty way of murdering an unborn or preborn child. It's just a horrific procedure, and I think that's what this film gets across. And I think they muddied that message a little bit, but other than that, I think this is a brilliant film. Everyone should go see. Go to the Gosnell official site. There's a listing of all the theaters that it's playing in. It's premiering this weekend. I saw it yesterday, and I can't praise it highly enough.